Welcome to the Rise to Shine podcast with Noelle Kustas, where we ignite the spark to discover your favorite self. It is time to get real, ladies. Hello, and welcome to the Rise to Shine podcast. I'm your host, Noelle Kustas, and I am going to just go big today. We are not going to be playing small in this space. And there is a line that I said in the last episode that seems to have hit really big for you listeners out there. And it was all about me mentioning in the episode of my takeaways of Eat, Pray, Love, the line that I said, "You deserve a champion." And ever since then, my DMs have been literally blowing up. The tears and the messages that have come to me saying this wrecked me in the best way have honestly not stopped. So today we're going to go deeper because this isn't just a pretty phrase that I was saying or that I continue to share with clients and friends and family even. This isn't something that we just put on a quote card, you guys. This is a truth that will either wake you up or it's going to wreck you because sometimes we tend to have illusions. And maybe it's going to do both for you because here's the thing. Too many women are in relationships that feel like a slow death. You guys, I am not exaggerating. Too many women are lowering their standards and calling it loyalty. Too many women are trying to fix what they were never, ever meant to carry. And if you're nodding your head right now, you already know that this episode isn't about blame. It's going to be about clarity. It's going to be about ownership. And most importantly, this is going to be about legacy level truth. We're going to talk about what a real champion looks like. Not the highlight reel, you guys, not the fantasy, but the kind of partner who doesn't just stand beside you, they actually see you and they hold you. They mirror the version of you that you're becoming. And we're going to be unpacking what a true champion is and what they are not. We got to go there. We're going to be talking about the role mental health plays. And get this, not just in them, but in you. We're going to talk about what to do if you're not with a champion right now. And yes, how to know if you're actually showing up as a champion too, because that is where it gets real. And this is where you remember what you were never meant to forget. You don't just glow up, you guys. We have to rewire. Glow up is, that is a phrase that I use a ton, but it's about rewiring. And it's also about the message that midlife isn't a crisis. If you're in midlife, you guys, this is going to be a comeback. And midlife in my world is 35 and up. But you guys, I would have needed this episode if I was 22 years old. Okay. So yes, you are going to be able to listen and you're going to be able to share. This is what I love about podcast episodes. And I don't want you to ever forget that the standard is you deserve a champion, period. That's just the standard. We're not going to sit around in this space anymore and lower standards or have low standards. Okay. So I want to talk to you about what a true champion is. And I've really been thinking about this. I've been researching this. I've been talking to clients about this. So this isn't just like a definition I looked up. It's something that I truly, truly believe. A champion is not someone who just says they love you. Please hear me in that. A champion is someone who shows up consistently, they show up in courage and with character. And I'm going to really explain what I mean by that. Okay. So, a true champion is going to see your full self, not just what you give, not just what you do, not just what you produce, but they're going to see you fully. And they're going to hold space for you without an ego. Now, ego is always going to be involved, right? But this is what I mean by that. They're not threatened by your strength or your sensitivity. Okay. A champion is not going to be threatened by that. We all have different seasons too. So I want you to remember that sometimes you may be holding a ton of strength, and sometimes you may be vulnerable and sensitive. And guess what? They're going to hold space without ego for you in that space. Okay. And here's the best part is that they are going to rise with you. They don't just cheer you on. I mean, yes, we love a partner that's going to cheer us on, but here is what's awesome is when you're with a champion, they're going to evolve right along with you. And they're going to protect your peace. And they're not going to do that by controlling your world. Okay? Protecting your peace is not keeping everything controlled for you, but it's about honoring your heart. And they are going to do the work on themselves. They're going to do the work on the relationship and on the shared vision that you have in your relationship. They're doing the work too. It's not just you. Now, I will say, and I have a dear friend that does a podcast, and she has been a guest on our podcast. She is amazing. My friend Becky really talks about doing the work that she started to do the work on her own. And what happened is that her husband came alongside of her and she didn't control what he was doing, right? She didn't control what he was doing, but he also then decided to start doing the work on himself as well. So I'm just saying that a champion, when there is work to be done, they will do the work. Okay. Now, some of the myths that I want to kind of be clear on is a champion isn't a fixer. A champion isn't a fantasy or a fairy tale version of a partner. I want you to really hear that. They don't show up perfect, but they show up with capacity. They show up with consistency. They're not perfect, but they show up with capacity and consistency. And here are some myths that I want to break as well. If he provides financially, that's enough. No, provision is not partnership. Or what about this one? He doesn't know how to express himself, but deep down, he loves me. Okay, I want to tell you, love unexpressed becomes a prison, not a partnership. If he is not expressing his love in some way, and again, we can go back to the 5 love languages. There's so many different ways that a man can communicate his love, right? So it doesn't mean that it's just words of affirmation. It doesn't mean that he's just pouring himself out to you, but please don't give him the excuse of he just doesn't know how to express himself. But I know deep down he loves me. Okay, this becomes your own prison. It's not a partnership. Or here's the biggest one that I hear and that I literally lived for so long. He'll change when, dot, dot, dot. You can fill in the blanks. You guys, if you hear one thing today, If your relationship is built on potential, it is not built on reality. If it's built on potential, it's not built on reality. I just want you to hear that today. I just know that this episode is meant to touch even one person. I just know that in my heart because I got too much of a reaction from the last episode on that specific part about the champion. So here's the thing. Sometimes the hardest truth is this. You've never really actually experienced a champion before. So you keep mistaking these breadcrumbs for what a champion is, for the banquet. Okay? You're mistaking some of these crumbs that they're leaving for you, and you're thinking that that's the whole buffet, that's the whole banquet. But I want to offer you this clarity around that. If you're always managing his moods, or if you're calming his storms, or dimming your own light, you're not with a champion. Yes, I said that. If you're always managing his moods, calming his storms, dimming your own light, you're not with a champion. If you're exhausted from feeling like you're always being the strong one, that isn't a partnership either. That's just a ton of emotional labor. And what we do in that is we start to disguise that as love. Oh, I'm just being the strong one. I'm the one doing the work right now because he needs me. Well, guess what? This is just labor, and it's emotionally exhausting. And again, we have seasons, and I'm not saying that there's not those times that this happens, but I'm talking about the longer picture. I'm talking about like what you're living day in and day out. Okay. So I want to make sure I clarify that as well. Because here's the thing, a champion isn't going to rescue you. But what they do is they recognize you. They see the woman that has been created and they say, let's build something worthy of her. Like, oh my gosh, I see her. I recognize her. I'm not here to rescue her, but man, she is so worthy. Not potentially worthy. She is worthy. Okay. And if I'm going to talk about what it means to have a champion, then I've got to take you back to the season of my life where I did not. And I want to be super real, especially for those of you that are new around here, because this isn't going to be about throwing stones. This is to offer you the mirror that I wish I had when I was stuck in the cycle of maybe he'll change. If we just had more money, if the stress would just let up, if I could just be better, maybe it would all feel okay. And I'm going to tell you, there were glimpses, there were good days. This is why I was in it for 19 years. And there was a ton of potential. So I stayed and I fought and I prayed. But if I'm being super honest with you, and this is hard to say and this is hard to admit, I wasn't in love with the man in front of me. I was actually in love with who he could maybe someday become. And that is so hard for me to actually like put my thoughts around that, but it took me a long time to realize that I wasn't in love with the man that was in front of me. I was in love with what could be. And believe me, that is a heavy weight to carry because you're not building a relationship. You're holding on to a projection. You are putting expectations on someone that is not meant for you to carry. And here's the thing. I took my vows so seriously. I meant them. I believe in a covenant. I still do. But here's what no one told me. God never asks you to abandon your soul to prove your loyalty. God never asks you to endure emotional, verbal, spiritual, physical abuse and call it submission. And it took me a really long time, years, like I said, 19 years, to even consider that what I was experiencing was not okay. Because I kept saying things like this: he's just under pressure. I'm not perfect either. Marriage is hard, right? These were all of the things that I said, and then some. Okay. But here's the truth that I had to face: hard does not mean harmful. Loyal does not mean lifeless. And staying for the sake of image or staying for the sake of guilt is not the same as staying from love. So I don't get to play victim in this either. I don't. I had to face the version of me that was addicted to fixing. And that, just saying that, makes me want to cry. That thought, if I just do more, if I just pray more, if I just give more, I can save this. I had to grieve the part of me that confused struggle with the significance. And I was exhausted. I was stretched so thin, and I was still saying, this is what faithfulness looks like. But it wasn't faithfulness. It was, I'd like to say it was more like fear wearing a spiritual mask. It really was. It was so much fear. And when I started healing, when I finally let myself whisper the words, maybe this isn't love, God met me there. And He didn't meet me with shame. He met me with clarity and with permission. And I got honest. I got the help that I needed. And I began praying for someone who would meet me at the level of peace and purpose that I wanted to step into. When I went through this process, you guys, it wasn't easy. This was so messy. It was scary. It was terrifying. We had children together. We had a home together. We had a life that we had built together. I loved his family. I still love his family so much. I'm actually so grateful because I am still close to them. But it was because of building truth. And it was finding my own truth and my own accountability in this 19 years. And now here's the thing. Years later, I'm with a man who doesn't just hold space for me. He actually protects that space. So he doesn't just hold it, he protects it for me. He doesn't flinch at my fire, like for real. When I am fiery, when I am just, not in a good space, he doesn't even flinch. He doesn't need me to shrink so he can stand tall. And that, my friend, is huge. That is huge. That is having a champion. And here's the thing. I know that I think it was McGuire, that the movie, that there's a line in there that says he completes me. And I used to think that way, like, oh, that was my fantasy. I just want someone to complete me. But guess what? When I really think about a champion, he doesn't complete me, he walks with me. We are in this together, and that That to me is what a champion is. That is what I am so, so grateful for. So, everybody take a breath. You might be in a place I need to take a breath because going back there is not easy. And although I revisit it often for the purpose of moving forward and to continue on the path of moving forward, but also being super, super real and vulnerable, I have to take a breath sometimes. And we're going to get into right now about the mental health and the capacity in relationships, because this is big too. And I want to talk about something that doesn't get said enough, at least in my own opinion. Yes, mental health matters, but it matters in both partners. And when it's ignored or when it's unaddressed or it's left untreated, it doesn't just impact the person struggling. It actually, what it does, it reshapes the entire emotional ecosystem of the relationship. It reshapes all of that. Your partner's struggle is not your fault, but it does affect your future. You can love someone deeply and still say, I cannot build my life around your dysregulation. Let's call it what it is. Mental health challenges don't make someone unlovable. They don't. But unhealed trauma, unmanaged emotional volatility, avoidance of responsibility, that is what makes relationships unsustainable, no matter how much potential they have. And I will say that until the cows come home. Loving someone through a season is one thing, you guys, but living in this loop of chaos, that's a whole nother conversation. And I want you to see the difference in that. If this is just a season that someone's going through, that is so different than the loop that continues. And those of you that know, you know. Those of you that don't know, maybe you don't have a partner yet, or maybe you've been in a relationship and you're single now, whatever, wherever you're at in that. Just want you to pay attention to the loop of chaos because that's what it becomes. Okay. And it's beautiful to support your partner. It is, and it's holy. It's what we're supposed to do, in my opinion. But there's a difference between supporting someone through healing and then also enabling them to stay stuck while you carry all the weight. That's the codependency part. When we enable them to stay stuck, because again, remember, it's about them or us staying bigger and them staying smaller, or vice versa. So you taking it all on to carry all of the weight to fix things is not healthy either. And here's some red flags of enabling, just in case you're like, what does that look like? Because I'm not really sure. Constantly making excuses for their behavior. That's enabling. Managing their mood so the house stays calm. If you're doing that, you guys, that's enabling. Silencing your own needs because you don't want to trigger them. And living in a cycle of hope, then disappointment, then guilt. Then you go to hope, disappointment, and guilt. And it's just a revolving door. You guys, that is part of the enabling. And if you're always the emotional caretaker and never the receiver, that is not love. That's a lot of imbalance. It's a lot of imbalance. And I am telling you, it's so much work, I know, and it's so scary and it's hard to hear. But your strength isn't measured by how much you can endure. It's measured by how honest you're willing to be about what's no longer sustainable. So I want you to just ask yourself, is he taking ownership of his own healing if there is mental health issues involved? Is there movement toward growth, or is it just apologies followed by the same behavior? So, yes, I'm growing, I'm doing this, I'm watching all my things. And then There's apologies because there's still the lashing out, there's still the hiding, there's still the blaming. Is your nervous system constantly in survival mode? Because if it is, you guys, I want you to really, really start to reflect. Start to see yourself. Start to honor yourself. Because again, this isn't about pointing fingers, it's about protecting your future. Mental health is real, grace is absolutely necessary, but grace without boundaries is becoming a martyr and it's dressed up as love. And I did that. I did that. So if you're listening right now thinking, holy cow, this is hitting way too close to home, let me pause and speak directly to your heart. You are not broken. You are not crazy. You're just becoming honest. And honesty will always feel like betrayal to the part of you that has spent years surviving on hope and hustle. It's going to feel like a betrayal to you and your partner as you start to unlock this, they might even see it as a betrayal as well. Okay. And I want you to make sure that you're asking the right questions. It's not about making a rash decision, it's about radical clarity. And so I want you to ask yourself if this is feeling really close to home. I want you to ask yourself, do I feel emotionally safe here? Do I feel consistently supported? Or do I feel consistently on edge? Ask yourself, am I free to dream and express and evolve? Or do I feel like I have to manage myself to be quote unquote acceptable in this relationship? And then I want you to ask yourself, do I feel with this person or do I feel lonely next to them? If any of those are resonating with you, I want you to really start to reflect on that. And if all four of those are resonating, you may have some work to do. I want you to also ask yourself, most importantly, am I in love with this person or the potential or expectation that I've assigned to them? Because that's huge. And some of the warning signs that you might not be with the champion if you feel like you're constantly too much or not enough. If you keep minimizing your needs to keep the peace. If you're exhausted trying to hold everything together. Or if you feel more like a coach or a therapist or a mother than a partner. I know for me, when I started answering these questions for myself, I literally felt like I was a mother. And there were even times, and whew, this is really taking it back, but there were even times. Now, mind you, when you have kids, there's definitely something to be said that, we refer to each other as mom or dad, right? To our kids. So we'll be like, hey, does mom say that that's okay? We refer to each other that way, right? But I look back on it and you guys, I'll never forget. It was before we were even married and we were in the grocery store and he started calling me mom. You guys, I was like, what? And I remember that like being super ick for me. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. Don't call me mom. Like, I'm not your mom. It was just weird. But I really believe that there was a part of him that thought of me as a mom, as his mom. So I just want to say if it feels like you're doing all of the emotional labor, then chances are you're not in a partnership. You're in a, how would I put this? You're like in a one woman rescue mission. That is not what we want in our lives. Okay. You can still love them and let go. You can. You can honor the history without sacrificing your future. And if you're thinking, but wait a minute, I took the vows, I committed. This is speaking to women that are married. Yes, honor matters. It does. I know. But I remember my Christian counselor that I had gone to at the time that had been counseling both of us. So he was seeing both perspectives. I remember him saying, but God doesn't call you to martyr your soul in the name of faithfulness. And those words hit me like a ton of bricks. And there is a grief when you realize that staying no longer serves who you were created to be. And that doesn't mean you failed. Especially you guys, I'm really talking to the women that you are experiencing emotional, verbal, or physical abuse. I'm really, really speaking loudly to you. Okay. And then if you're still going, I don't know. I don't know. I'm feeling like a lot of this is resonating, but there's some that like is not quite us. Like, I want you to just maybe write this down, come back to it, think about it. But I want you to think about this like reflection prompt. If I were mentoring my daughter, so I want you to, whether you have a daughter or not, maybe it's mentoring your best friend. If I was mentoring my daughter, my best friend through this, what would I tell her to do? If I were witnessing her carrying this level of emotional weight, would I call that love? I want you to think about that. So, whether you're married, whether you're in a relationship, I want you to think about that. If you're still in the relationship, and you're doing all the school drop offs, you're paying all the bills, you're saying the prayers, you're trying to keep everything alive, keeping hope alive. I see you. And I just want to also say you're not weak for staying. You're not stupid for still hoping. Some women say, I feel so stupid. No, you're not. You're human and you're loyal. And I know you've probably convinced yourself if I just hold on a little bit longer, maybe he'll come around. But here's also what I need you to hear. There's a difference between love and emotional loyalty to a pattern that's been hurting you for years. And here's the thing, too, is that two truths can exist. You can have someone deeply and still admit that something has to change. You can love them deeply and still admit that something has to change. You can see their goodness and still name the dysfunction. You can have those two truths at the same time. You can be faithful and still honor your freedom in Christ, which was never meant to be lived inside of this emotional bondage. For those of you that are holding it as a believer, because I'm speaking from that space because I really did that. I took that to such an extreme. And I will tell you, I still have to do work around that. I felt like I was going to be so judged by other Christians, by my church. Hence the reason why I saw a Christian counselor, because I was like, I just need clarity around all of this. And that might be an unpopular opinion. I'm just speaking my truth. Okay. And these are just my opinions. I am not an expert in this, but I do know that from working with my clients, from going through the work, from going through 12-step programs on being in a space where I was the codependent, all of the things, This is just my truth. And so you can, like I say, you can take the fruit and spit out the seeds, whatever it is that you need from this. But I also want you to make sure that you've clearly communicated your needs. Don't just hope that someone is going to read your mind. That's one of the biggest mistakes as women that we can make, right? And I also want you to think about, has he been showing a pattern of change? If he is in the midst of change, but not quite where, he might end up, if you're noticing a pattern of change, that is amazing. I just don't want you to get that confused with a cycle of apology with no real growth. Do you feel peace in this relationship, or and this is where we have to get really real and it's hard to answer, are you addicted to the highs and the lows? Because sometimes that happens. And again, I don't want you to feel shame around that. We may think, of course not. I'm not addicted to the highs and lows. I hate this. But I want you to really think about your life and what it is that makes you feel powerful, what makes you feel worthy. Is it by controlling the scenario? Is it by being the savior to your children? Because it happens. And then I want you to think about, do you feel emotionally safe? Or are you shrinking to stay acceptable to him? And I want you to also know that you're allowed to want more. We've talked about this in other episodes. Wanting emotional safety isn't being needy. Wanting a partner who shows up for you, not just promises to, but actually does it, is not being demanding. Wanting joy instead of just survival is not selfish at all. But if you want things to shift, then you need to shift first. Not to save the relationship, but to just return to your own truth. Because here's the secret, when you stop, mm, how do I put this? When you stop contorting to be palatable, two things are going to start to happen. You either invite them into transformation, or you reveal what they never had the capacity to give. And that is such truth in these experiences. I hear it all the time from people who come out of this on the other side. And that's what I was talking about, what happened with Becky, is that she stopped trying to like configure and, change and contort herself. And guess what? It invited him into his own transformation. And that is why they have such a beautiful relationship now. So you have choices in this. Doesn't mean that I'm saying leave your relationship. No, 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 no. But when you also start to change, it's going to reveal either they have the capacity or they don't. But no matter what, you get to come home to you. And from that place, everything starts to become more clear. Everything. I promise you. And we can't go without talking about, are you showing up as his champion? We can talk about being with the champion all day long. And gosh, I'm so grateful to have a champion now in my life. But this conversation doesn't work unless we hold both sides. Yes, 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 you deserve a champion. But let's also ask the hard question, are you showing up as his? Or if you're not in a relationship, are you going to show up as his? Not from this like over functioning or not from a fixing place, but really from a place of true partnership, true presence, from your faith. And what does that mean? It means Well, I should say this, being a champion does not mean carrying the labor of two people. It does not mean making excuses for harmful behavior. It does not mean shrinking your voice to protect his ego. It does not mean becoming his therapist or his mom or his spiritual coach. That's not being a champion. That's being a cushion. You're responsible for that. What it does mean is a true champion is reflecting their partner's potential without rescuing them. You believe in them, but you don't enable them. I hope that's making sense. You hold boundaries with belief, right? And you don't settle for the version of him that plays small. You call him higher with love. So ask yourself, am I offering encouragement or control? Am I leading with support or sacrifice? Am I honest about my needs or am I hiding them to avoid the conflict? Am I expecting that he reads my mind and then holding these huge high expectations when he doesn't even really know if your needs are being met? I'll never forget when my husband, when I was being a little passive, maybe a little passive aggressive, and I remember him saying to me, "Hey babe, how are you doing?" And I was like, okay. When really deep down I was not okay at all. I was suffering, but I wasn't telling him. And then he just like skated around it and he was like, okay, just checking. And he might have even asked me one or two more times. And then I was resentful because I was like, why isn't he doing anything about me being upset? And I realized, and he said to me, he said, because you are expecting me to read your mind, and I cannot do that. And I also just played that game because I was like, okay, I'm not going to tell him how I'm really feeling because then we're going to get in this big fight. This wasn't with my current husband, this was with my other one. And I was always afraid of getting into a fight, so I never expressed my needs. And I want you to also think, do you champion his purpose or do you punish him with the resentment, the not speaking to him, that unspoken space that we can often go to? And then maybe the hardest one is, am I asking for something from him that I haven't yet offered myself? Because being his champion doesn't mean you put him above you. It doesn't. It means that you walk beside him. Your eyes are open, right? You're actually holding each other to a standard of rooted growth, like a really, really grounded love. That's the standard that you're holding yourself to. So if you've made it this far, I want you to hear this again. You deserve a champion, not someone perfect, not someone who never messes up, but someone who shows up and chooses you, not just with words, but actually with actions. A champion doesn't save you, but they see you. They see you. In my opinion, a champion doesn't complete you. They partner with who you're becoming. You partner each other. And what I just absolutely believe with all of my heart, a champion isn't going to dim your light. They help you protect it. They help you protect your light. If they're dimming your light, you guys, they're not a champion. And this isn't about throwing out good men. This is about standards that protect your soul. Sometimes we're just not the right fit. And it's not to say that they are not amazing humans and you're not an amazing human. It's to say that maybe if you're dating someone right now, or perhaps You got into a marriage that maybe you were even questioning this relationship before you said I do. This is about the standards that protect us because a relationship should hold room for your joy, for your calling, your evolution. You guys, my husband, I was not the same person 10 years ago when we got together. Not at all. But he has held so much space for me to evolve and to change as I have for him. And there is such beauty in that. It is so beautiful to grow together. And, you know, my previous husband, he was not a bad person. Were there bad things that he did? Were there bad things that, happened in our relationship? Yes. Yes, there were. But it doesn't mean that he can't change, that he can't grow, and perhaps find someone that is amazing for him. Just like what I did for myself, I had to change. I had to grow from who I was in that relationship to find my champion. I prayed about him well before I even met him. And I continue to do the work on myself to show up as the person that my champion was going to want and need as we go through life's changes. I heard my business mentor actually said this. She was listening to a podcast and she had said, I want you to consider when we're speaking about change, and this just is off the cuff and reminded me of this. She said, when you're in a relationship, and especially when you're dating and you're going through it, I want you to think that like we're in a life and we're going to go through life and life is going to life. It is going to be lifing. Right now in our life, it's lifing. And what I mean by that is there are some hard things that we've been going through with health issues, family, their health issues, all of the things. And here's the thing, and this is what she said. She said she had heard when someone was giving her expert advice on dating, they said, are you with the person that potentially, if your parents haven't passed away yet, you would want to go through that time when it's going to be the hardest time of your life for your parents to pass away? Because you will go through that probably in your lifetime. Do you want it to be that person that you walk through that space with? And are they going to be able to hold space for you in that space? And she said that that just literally changed her. It woke her up to some things that she was settling for in relationships. And she was like, oh gosh, there's no way he'd be able to deal with that because I am going to be potentially at my worst at that time. I mean, we're thinking, we're thinking ahead of ourselves, but this is what she was reflecting about this. And she was saying, oh my gosh, that was a huge wake up call for me because I don't think that would be good. I don't think we'd be able to get through that together in a way that I would need because I'm going to need the most support during that time. And I don't think he's capable of that. So I want you to ask yourself that question too. And I know I got off on a little tangent there, but it just reminded me when we're talking about changing and we're not going to continue to be the same person that we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And my husband and I talk about this all the time. We know that. We know that we're evolving and we're changing, but there's so much beauty in that because there's also so much goodness that comes from life as you age and you get older. There's beauty and there's hardship. And I am so grateful that I get to go through all of it with him. And he feels the same way about me. And man, let me tell you, he's held some space for me. He has. So let the answers come from the deepest, deepest part of you, not the loyal to a fault part, but the version of you that knows what you're worth. You're not just here to be in survival mode. You're not just here to settle. You get to set the new standard. Okay. So let this person that if you're dating right now, let this person that you are thinking about, that you're praying for, let it be a champion. If you're in a marriage right now that's hard, that's challenging, you may be with your champion, but you guys both may be dealing with some things that you have to take accountability for yourself as well. So again, this isn't about like, oh my gosh, she's terrible, move him out. That is not how this works. I know. But I just want you to understand the difference between what a true champion is and how you can be a champion. Because maybe you're even in the position where you're questioning your own self. And maybe you are with the champion, but you're like, man, I haven't been doing the work that I want to do on myself. I've been struggling and I've been, taking it out on him. I have been doing things that I'm not proud of. Maybe this is for you to hear. It's always let it start with us. We can only change ourselves. We can't change another person. And I hope with that you feel seen today. I hope that something in this episode gave you permission to tell the truth to yourself, to your future. And just remember, you're not asking for too much. You're just remembering what you are always worthy of. And as always, with any of these episodes, if it's moved you, please share it with maybe someone who's going through it. Maybe someone who hasn't gone through it, but is hoping and praying for a champion. Share it with that friend because we all need truth. We all need to reflect. We all need to get quiet within ourselves. And if this resonated with you, tag me, DM me. I want to hear what landed for you because this isn't just a podcast. I really believe that this is a movement and you guys are a part of it. Like I said, I had no intentions of doing one on this particular topic until I got so much of a response. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sliding into my DMs and having these conversations. I am so grateful for that. It helps me to grow too. And if you have insight and, it's not always to agree. Maybe you don't agree with some of the things that I've shared. Please share that with me too. I want to hear your experiences, your opinions. They matter to me. So, with all of that, I just want to end this with keep rising, keep shining, and know your best day is right here waiting for you. And we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for joining me here today. Your presence means the world to me. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider leaving a rating and review. And don't forget to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Head to the show notes and let's connect. Rise to Shine Co. is ready to support you in coaching, collaboration, life tips, or even a coffee chat. Until next time, keep shining, my friends.